Pastor Don, we've just finished up a great series on the implications of our faith in which you have talked about worldview and having a Christian worldview. And you've talked about heaven, which was a great series and very enlightening. And I know you got a lot of great feedback about that. And you've talked about hell and the realities of hell, which is something that a lot of times we avoid even thinking about as Christians. But now you're getting ready to move on to a whole nother series about authority. Tell us a little bit about that.
Looking at the subject of authority in light of the fact that it's such a sensitive issue today, because there's been such abuse of authority throughout history, whether we're talking in the political arena, talking about the church arena, of course, and also in the family. The Bible speaks a lot about authority, so I want to hit it head on. Just what is authority? Where does it come from? Who is the ultimate authority figure? And of course, it's God. Mm-hmm. Does God relegate authority? Yes, He does. And to whom does He relegate it to? And also looking at the sphere of authority. And what happens, what is our response to an authority figure that abuses that authority? What happens to what is our response to a person who is an authority figure and they violate their own convictions and we become aware of that? How do we respond to the person without violating the office? How, and that's not an easy one to navigate. And I think it's important that we learn just how to respond to authority that has fallen short of biblical expectations as well as our own personal expectations.
And that can be within the context of a family, or in a business or work environment, in the church, or even in a nation.
Yes.
As you and I were talking earlier, you referenced President Nixon as an example of that.
That's very, very true. In fact, we can trace it throughout history, and the most recent history, of course, would be President Richard Nixon when he violated his own authority as the President of the United States, and how there was a shift. It was almost like there was an earthquake. Tectonic plates shifted from a societal point of view. People's regard for authority was lessened. People relating to authority shifted. There was more of a disdain. There was more of a disregard. And there's no question. But what happens if we throw the baby out with the bathwater? What happens when we throw out the principle of authority because an authority figure has not met its and our expectation? We throw out authority, the principle, we have anarchy. Mm-hmm. We can never lose sight of the fact that all authority proceeds from God. God doesn't just have authority, God is authority, and all authority proceeds from Him. We throw authority out, we throw God out.
So you're going to address what do we do in those situations then when we maybe disagree with a person, disagree with a philosophy, but we still have to respect the office.
Very well stated. Very well stated. Exactly.
Awesome. And so in doing that, how will we be able to line ourselves up with spiritual authority in such a way that we are honoring God?
Very good question. You know, we struggle with this in churches because in so many cases church leaders have failed us. And in fact, this is what's motivating me to begin this series, the fact that we cannot lose sight that if God is authority, and the principle of authority proceeds from God, how do I navigate through the waters of dealing with a church leader who has failed, but at the same time not lose sight of the principle of authority and the principle of God and the person of God? You see, it is too easy for me to resent not only the person, which is bad enough, but also finding myself resenting the principle and God, because God, it all proceeds from God. Mm-hmm. It is too easy for me to reject not only the person and the behavior, of course reject the behavior, but reject the person and reject the office. Mm-hmm. And how do we do that? Which is not easy. Mm-hmm. It must be addressed because we end up with what we have today. It is believed from a statistical point of view, we have more Christians today that are unchurched than any other time in history. And that is a statistic. And I ask myself the question, where does that come from? I believe much of that has to do with the fact that we as a society, including Christians, have rejected the principle of authority. Mm-hmm. Because the church is an institution of authority. And when we reject authority, we also, in so many cases, reject the church. I don't need the church because some minister did this. I'm not going to invest into the church because some leader did this. I can't trust the church because I couldn't trust a certain pastor.
Thinking that we can just kind of find our own way.
Exactly.
And then that trickles down then into the family as
Yes, it
well.
does. Yes, it
And
does.
that has the potential to affect marriage relationships, parent-child relationships.
Most definitely.
And
Most
so,
definitely.
so then how are we going to be able to look at fixing that? What's the process there?
Well, the process is going to involve acknowledging, number one, that leaders have failed, number one. Number two, the fact that though they have failed, there are options in terms of not leaving the church. We can be a part of a local church and we can have a role. And the part of it also is talking about the fact that trust should never be a gift. Trust should be earned. And by arbitrarily putting our trust in a person that we don't know, we're setting ourselves up for failure. Reality is that if I'm a part of a group within a local church, particularly a small group, I get to know that leader. I'm reminded of Hebrews chapter 13 that addresses this whole issue for 30, where it talks about we are to know authority figures, we are to greet them, we are to obey them, we are to remember them. It all speaks of relationship, all in one chapter. Remember, greet, and obey them, because we have a relationship with those leaders. Chapter 13, Hebrews, spells that out. And so that's what we're going.
Awesome. So it doesn't necessarily say that we always have to agree, but
Correct.
we still have that dimension of respect,
Yes.
which, as I see in children's ministry, and I know you see a lot, tends to be lacking
Yes.
in people now, in the home, in the workplace, as well as
No
in the
question.
church.
No question.
Awesome. Well, we're going to be excited to be here for this series, Pastor. Thank you.
You're very, very welcome. I'm looking forward to it myself.
Be
God
here
bless.
Sunday morning for more.
Thank you.